May 4th, 2025. Midnight. The skies over Moscow, a symbol of Russian power, were about to become the stage for an unprecedented act of defiance. For weeks, the Kremlin had projected an image of unshakable security, its layered air defenses deemed impenetrable. But in the quiet command centers of Ukrainian military intelligence, a final check was complete. Operation Iron Net was live. The weapon was not a single billion-dollar stealth bomber, but a swarm of 350 low-cost drones built for one purpose: to overwhelm, to saturate, and to prove that no capital was safe. Launched from the shadows within Russia's own territory, this armada of ingenuity was now converging on its target. As the first blips appeared on Russian radar screens, a single critical question hung in the balance. Could this storm of circuits and courage breach the world's most formidable air defense network, or would it be wiped from the sky without a trace? Comment your thoughts, because this is where it gets interesting. For months, Ukraine had been refining its deep strike capabilities. What began with sporadic, symbolic attacks on targets in Russia's border regions had evolved into a sophisticated, multi-pronged strategy aimed at the core of Russian military logistics, and increasingly, its political psyche. The goal was no longer just to disrupt supply lines, but to bring the war home to the Russian people in a way that was impossible to ignore, to shake the very foundation of the Kremlin's narrative. You can support us by liking, subscribing, and telling us which country you are watching from. The clock ticked past 11:30 p.m. Moscow time. In command centers deep underground, Russian aerospace forces officers monitored their screens. The airspace around the capital was a carefully managed ecosystem of radar coverage, surface-to-air missile batteries from the long-range S-400s on the outskirts to the medium-range Pantsir S-1 and Tor M2 systems ringing the city center, and a web of electronic warfare assets. They were confident. They had dealt with Ukrainian drones before. A few would get through, cause some minor damage, and be shot down. It was a nuisance, not a crisis. They were wrong. The attack did not come from a single direction. It was a coordinated flood from multiple launch points, primarily within Russia's own territory, launched by Ukrainian sabotage and reconnaissance groups. These weren't large, expensive military drones, but a mix of modified civilian aircraft and domestically produced Ukrainian UAVs like the UJ-22 and the now infamous Bober. They were small, low-flying, and made of composite materials that presented a minimal radar cross-section. The first wave, consisting of approximately 80 drones, began appearing on Russian radar scopes just after midnight. They came in low, skimming the treetops, following river valleys and roadways to mask their approach. Their flight paths were not direct. They were programmed with preset GPS coordinates, weaving and dodging to avoid predictable patterns. Inside the Russian Air Defense Command, the initial response was one of controlled confusion. The number of contacts was unprecedented. Dozens of tiny flickering icons began to populate the screens, converging on Moscow from the south, southwest, and west. The system, designed to track and engage a limited number of high-value targets like cruise missiles or bombers, was suddenly facing a distributed intelligence. Alarms blared. The order was given: engage. The outer ring of S-400 and Buk M3, Sydney Knee, it Yestams fired first. From dozens of miles out, missiles streaked into the night sky, their fiery trails visible from the suburbs. The success rate was high. Dozens of the slow-moving drones were obliterated in brilliant, distant flashes. But for every drone destroyed, the system's tracking and firing cycles were consumed. Radars had to reacquire, launchers had to reload, and the swarm kept coming. The second wave, another 100 drones, was already in the air, timed to arrive just as the outer defenses were at their most stressed. These drones flew even lower, some just meters above the ground. They were now entering the engagement zone of the shorter-range systems, the Pantsirs and Tors with their rapid-firing cannons and missiles. By 12:25 a.m., the first drones began to breach the city limits of Moscow. The sound of air raid sirens, once an alien wail in the capital, now cut through the night, followed by the staccato thunder of anti-aircraft guns and the crump of interceptor missiles. The sky over the city became a terrifying light show. Tracer rounds from Pantsir systems, etched orange lines across the darkness, while the explosions of intercepted drones bloomed like sudden, deadly flowers. Social media in Moscow exploded faster than official news channels could react. First came the videos of the defenses, shaky phone-filmed clips from balconies, capturing the surreal spectacle of a battle in the skies above one of the world's great cities. Then came the videos of impacts. A drone, its wings shredded by shrapnel, spiraled out of control and slammed into the roof of a residential apartment building in the Orakovo-Borisovo district, igniting a fire that lit up the entire block. Another struck a power substation in Lyublino, plunging several neighborhoods into darkness. The most dramatic footage came from near the Kotlovka district, where a UAV was seen corkscrewing downwards before detonating just meters from a large, nondescript government building housing communications infrastructure. The Russian defense was valiant but chaotic. The Pantsir crews, designed to engage a handful of targets, were overwhelmed. Their radar screens were cluttered with contacts. They would engage one drone, only for two more to appear from a different vector. The sheer volume of the swarm was creating a saturation effect, a classic tactic where quantity has a quality all its own. The sophisticated Russian air defense network, built to defend against NATO, was being tested by a fleet of cheap, disposable drones. Crucially, the attack was not just about causing physical damage. It was a psychological and information operation from the start. Each drone was a message. Nowhere is safe. The war you started is now at your doorstep. By 2 a.m., the last of the drones had been shot down or had struck their targets. The guns fell silent, leaving an eerie quiet broken only by the wail of emergency service sirens. The immediate toll was being assessed. Officially, Russian authorities reported shooting down 320 of the 350-plus drones. They acknowledged limited damage to several residential and infrastructure sites and a handful of casualties, mostly from falling shrapnel. They framed it as a great victory for their air defenses. But the reality on the ground, pieced together from open-source intelligence, satellite imagery, and local reports, told a more nuanced story. While the vast majority of drones were indeed intercepted, the mere fact that dozens penetrated the inner defensive rings of Moscow was a strategic victory for Ukraine. The physical damage, while not catastrophic, was significant and widespread. A fuel depot in Kapotnya was set ablaze, sending a towering plume of black smoke into the sky that was visible for miles. A research facility linked to the Russian defense industry in Nagotinskaya Poima took a direct hit. Power outages affected hundreds of thousands of residents. The psychological impact, however, was the real prize. For the first time, Muscovites had spent 2 hours in a state of sheer terror, huddled in basements and underground parking garages, listening to the battle rage above their city. The invincibility of the Russian state, a core tenet of Putin's power, had been visibly punctured. The carefully maintained facade of a special military operation happening over there was irrevocably broken. The international response was immediate and stark. Western leaders were cautious in their public statements, calling for de-escalation, while privately viewing the attack as a masterstroke of asymmetric warfare. Military analysts across NATO countries were scrambling to dissect the footage. The consensus was clear. Ukraine had just rewritten the playbook for modern warfare. The attack demonstrated several critical developments. First was the democratization of air power. A nation without a significant air force had managed to project power over 500 miles into the heart of its adversary's territory, using cheap, accessible technology. Second was the vulnerability of integrated air defenses. The attack proved that even the most advanced air defense systems can be saturated and defeated by a large enough swarm of low-cost targets. The cost-benefit analysis was brutal. A single S-400 missile costs millions of dollars. The drone it shoots down might cost $20,000. Third was the rise of the poor man's Air Force. This was not a one-off strike. It was a sustained, distributed, and logistically complex operation that pointed to a highly developed and resilient network of agents inside Russia, capable of coordinating mass launches. In Kiev, there was no official claim of responsibility, but a knowing silence. Ukrainian military intelligence sources quietly briefed journalists, highlighting the operation's success in degrading Russian morale, and diverting critical air defense assets away from the front lines in Donbass and Zaporizhia. Every Pantsirs 1 system defending Moscow was one less system hunting Ukrainian jets and helicopters in the combat zone. The Kremlin's response was a mixture of fury and forced bravado. President Putin addressed the nation later that morning, condemning the terrorist attack and vowing a harsh and proportionate response. He praised the performance of the air defense forces, but the subtext was one of profound embarrassment. Internally, the security apparatus went into overdrive. The FSB launched a massive crackdown, hunting for the sabotage cells responsible for the launches. Dozens were arrested, but the decentralized nature of the operation made it difficult to dismantle the entire network. Militarily, Russia was forced into a painful strategic dilemma. They had to now permanently station a significant portion of their most advanced air defense systems around Moscow and other major cities like St. Petersburg, thinning out their coverage along the front lines and key military installations. This was a direct and tangible degradation of their overall warfighting capability, achieved by Ukraine without firing a single ballistic missile. The attack on May 4th established a new normal. In the weeks and months that followed, similar, though smaller, swarm attacks became a regular feature of the war. The shockwave of that midnight raid reverberated far beyond the damaged buildings in Moscow's suburbs. It signaled to the world that the battlefield had no rear areas anymore. It demonstrated that determination and innovation could, in fact, counter raw military power. And it served as a stark warning to other nations about the terrifying potential of drone swarm warfare in the 21st century. The skies over Moscow have not been quiet since. The drones keep coming, a relentless, buzzing reminder that in a war of attrition, the ability to strike at the enemy's heart, both physically and psychologically, can be the ultimate strategic equalizer. The night of May 4th, 2025 will be remembered as a turning point. It wasn't a battle for a city or a piece of land, but a battle for perception, for morale, and for the very definition of the battlefield. It proved that in the modern era, a swarm of 350 cheap drones could achieve a strategic impact once reserved for armies of thousands. It was a lesson in asymmetric warfare, in the power of innovation, and a chilling preview of conflicts to come. The image of tracer fire over the Kremlin is an image that will haunt geopolitics for decades. If you found this deep dive into one of the most audacious military operations of the 21st century compelling, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more detailed analysis of modern conflict. What do you think the long-term consequences of this kind of drone warfare will be? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.